Good shot, kid. I think you got him. Good shot, kid. I think you got him.
Hello there and welcome back to some more Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Today we'll continue our Let's Play. This is episode 59. In today's episode, we are taking our first look at street races. These opened up to us after flight school. We got a call from Jeffro, so we are going to be doing them here in San Fierro. They actually start at the car showroom we own, which is actually quite convenient. Unlike in Vice City, you are provided the vehicle during the street races, and there are multiple locations. There's one in San Fierro, one in Las Venturas, one in Los Santos, and there's even flight races as well. Plane races, helicopter races, that sort of thing. Air races, that's the word I'm looking for. Either way, you get $10,000 per race, and at this current location, there are 6 of them we need to do today. The first of which is called Dirt Bike Danger, which gives us a Sanchez to race against a bunch of other Sanchez's out here in the rural countryside of the Badlands. This one I will put down as very pretty darn easy because the Sanchez is a really good vehicle. The AI don't quite drive them to their full potential. They often get tangled with each other. So basically, as long as you don't fall off within the first, I don't know, 30 seconds or so, you should be able to win this one quite handedly. In all honesty, the street races in this game are pretty darn easy. I mean, they were pretty darn easy in Vice City, but I guess that's more because you can choose the car that you are taking in this game. You don't get to choose the vehicle, but again, they're pretty easy. Usually the game provides you a pretty good vehicle, and I will outline when it doesn't. One thing that should be mentioned is you can kill your opponents in this. Technically, there is no disqualification for doing so. However, they do give them a lot more health. I think they have about 400-500% of the health of a normal character in the game. So actually killing them is a lot more difficult. I think I might actually end up killing one of these guys by accident, if I remember. Unless I'm remembering something else later on. But actually, I am remembering something from something I can't talk about yet. But yes, now. You can kill your opponents if you wish. There's no disqualification for doing so, or popping tyres or anything like that. It's not really worth it. You probably won't need to. And one last thing to mention, there's no laps in this game. It's all just sort of straight line sprint courses like that. So as you can see there, minute 50, Sanchez, again, pretty darn easy. Go into the countryside, come out the other end. No real problems there. I believe the vehicles using this might have some sort of fireproofing protection, if I'm recalling correctly, so if you want to store them in your garage for that, you can. That fireproofing's not really all that useful, but it's something you can do if you so desire. Next up, we move to the Bandito country, which is essentially a lot like the last race, but this time we get given the Bandito, which is an interesting sort of custom-built dune buggy sandhopper type vehicle with a big V8 in the back of it, as you can see. I would say this is another very easy race. It's a lot like the Sanchez race, again sort of racing through the sort of the Badlands. They're pretty difficult to roll, the Bandito, because obviously it's sort of very wide at the bottom, very narrow at the top, so usually it'll just fall straight right over. Big roll cage, of course. But yeah, no, this one also isn't massively difficult. Bandito, bit of a rare vehicle. You do see it in a couple of the missions. You've actually seen it in the Torino missions. Don't crash into that beef injection that spawns down there. But yeah, there's no point of storing it from here. There's a spawn point for it in San Fierro if you want one, and of course it shows up in a few missions as well. Be careful on that corner so you don't accidentally end up in the drink. Of course, destroying the vehicle will disqualify you. Now, one nice thing is if you do get disqualified for destroying the vehicle or whatever, you end up back at the selection screen. So as long as you don't die, because I think if you die you will spawn at a hospital, but if you end up disqualified by either rolling your vehicle, getting out of it for a length of time, so on and so forth, you will not you'll just be sent back to the selection screen, so it's not really a big deal. So, and if you do want to store any of these vehicles in your garage, again, it's another fairly simple process. Just simply drive them all the way over to San Fierro, park them in the garage at the car dealership, and then just destroy them while they're inside the garage. Shut the door before the screen pops up, and your car will be in there when you show up next, which is actually useful for one of the vehicles, which you will see later, because that is actually a legitimately rare car. As you can see here, we're sort of playing with fire around the Baco Beyond Lake, which is brown, and interestingly enough, because of the weird way reflections and stuff work in this game, if you end up sinking a vehicle, you can't actually see the underneath of it, which is interesting, because anything in the water becomes transparent. So that's a fun little fact for you. I'm going to be speaking through the entirety of these, so I apologise if this is a bit more of a slower and rambly commentary, because there's not an awful lot to discuss here. But yep, that's the end of Bandito Country, $10,000. As you can see, dunk it in the drink there. Doesn't really matter though, because we don't need the vehicle anymore. Next up, we have our first moderately difficult event in the racing section, and that is Go-Karting, which is interesting because of the go-kart. First time we're seeing this vehicle, one of the very few times, thankfully, because the go-kart is a pretty awful vehicle to drive. If you've never driven a go-kart in a video game before, let me give you a little tip on what this is like. It is incredibly sensitive in its steering. It's very easy to make a mistake, and because of the AI being the AI, it can often be interesting, to say the least. And despite the fact this is only a 1 kilometer track, it is also worth bearing in mind that the well, I mean, just look at it, it's not going to be the most toughest vehicle, shall we say. You can definitely destroy a go-kart, the engine can explode, and that will of course result in you getting disqualified. So this one might take a couple of runs, and of course traffic as well. I would probably recommend doing this sort of later at night, as opposed to doing this sort of mid-afternoon as I'm doing, where everything can go wrong, because traffic is around every single corner. Also, you can still get wanted levels during this as well, so do watch out for that. One fortunate thing though, of course, is that if you're having to deal with traffic, then the AI are having to deal with the traffic too, so they're not going to be too much of an issue in that aspect. You can get them caught up in that. And they're also not the smartest, the AI, so they'll smash into stuff on their own. They'll take lines which aren't particularly optimal, so don't worry too much about them. More in this one, just focus on your own car control, making sure you're getting used to the go-kart, try not to get it to explode through too many collisions, and you should be alright. As I said, it's just a case of trying to get used to the go-kart. You might be able to do it within a single race session, you might need to take a few attempts at this, but either way, you know, there's no real punishment for coming second. You just have to do it again, and you'll get a tag that says loser. You don't get any money, as far as I'm aware, for second or third, so it's not worth doing it to learn it, but, you know, if you need to learn, you need to learn. So, but, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the go-kart, you might have been able to tell by now. And it's not a vehicle I'd recommend particularly, but it is the vehicle that we need to complete this, and as you can see, $10,000. 2 minutes to do a kilometre. That pretty much tells you everything you need to know. I'd imagine you could probably get that race down to about 155 if you do really well. Next up, we end up on our first hard race of this section, our first hard street race so far, the San Fierro Fast Lane, which tasks us, well, it gives us an alpha, and tasks us to complete this 2 kilometre course up in the north of San Fierro. This one, quite simply put, is just difficult because of the car they give you. Sometimes, like I said, for the most part, the cars they give you are pretty decent in terms of their class, and I mean, I'm not saying the Alpha's a bad car, as you really like it, but it is outclassed by the other vehicles that you will see in this race. More poignantly, it's outclassed by the Jester. The Jester's a really nice handling, good all-round car, good stats across the board. The Alpha, a little bit more understeery, rear-wheel drive, I believe, feels a lot heavier in the handling than the Jester does, so the Jester is more nimble, quicker, better up the hills and so on and so forth. So your main goal in this race is just trying to get yourself in front of the Jester, hoping it gets itself caught up on traffic. If it gets too far ahead to the point where you can't see it anymore, then chances are you're not catching it, because your Alpha is not as quick as the Jester. So as you can see there, I got quite lucky, ended up smashing it into a traffic car. That's the sort of miracle you need, is a traffic car coming up. Alternatively, you can do what I did at the start. There is 2 Jesters in this race. So, I mean, if the opportunity presents itself to spin one out, I'm not going to hold it against you. It's not a bad idea, per se. I mean, it can, more often than not, karma you, I find. But if it doesn't, then, yeah, you're alright. But yeah, no, like I said, the Alpha's certainly not a bad car. I actually really like the Alpha. One of my favourite cars in the game, but it is definitely outclassed by what is probably my favourite car in the game, which is the Jester. Either way, $10,000, 137, and as much as I like it, I do attempt to dunk it in the drink here, which doesn't quite work. Anyways, next up we move on to the San Fierro Hills, which is probably one of the more unique street races in the game, not least because of the vehicle they give you. This is actually our first and the only time in the game we get to drive the Phoenix muscle car. Of course, this was a famed piece of Vice City. You saw these everywhere. We even exported them at some point, but in this game the Phoenix has been reduced to merely a cameo role. It shows up in this street race and it shows up in a mission, which you can't keep it after that mission because essentially you have to destroy it as part of the mission. So yeah, very rare vehicle indeed. Of course, the street race is the way to get this, and as I previously mentioned, if you want the Phoenix, what you need to do is you need to head off to the San Fierro garage, put it in, blow it up, and then come out of the racing menu when it respawns you, and you should have your nice shiny Phoenix ready for you in your garage. Interestingly enough, this thing does actually have quite a few cosmetic mods and so on, but for whatever reason, Rockstar decided the Phoenix is not supposed to spawn in traffic, so it doesn't. It's a bit of a shame, really. Again, it's actually a pretty good vehicle. Definitely one of the better muscle car style vehicles, which is basically what you are racing against in this race. I think there's some Buffaloes, maybe another Phoenix here and there. But yeah, overall, a fairly easy street race, and the reason this one is easy is because of the second half of it. So the first half of it, basically going around the San Fierro city, is always a race of attrition. Try to keep your car in decent mechanical condition. Of course, it can be a little bit difficult with the traffic and so on and so forth, because if you can manage to keep the car in good condition for that bit, you're going to walk away with the win by the second half of this race. So of course, we are coming down the San Fierro freeway. Fortunately, it decided to get a little bit later at night here, so the traffic volume did decrease, which was nice. Again, sort of just driving in the middle of the freeway should help to keep your car in good condition, and again, you'll want to do that because the second half of this street race leads us through the seldom explored Missionary Hill section of San Fierro, which is one of my personal favourite spots in the game. It's a really nice sort of mountain road you have to loop up here, which is, again, incredibly fun and also incredibly challenging for the AI. I haven't tested this, but if I had to guess, almost none of the AI finishes this race because they are far too aggressive up here in the Missionary Hill segment. So make sure to take your sweet time sort of navigating the mountain roads. Phoenix is not the best car in terms of acceleration up the hill, so it should be fairly easy to not get overzealous with your speed. The hill climb section isn't the bit you need to worry about, it's the downhill section. Again, make sure to sort of keep your camera looking constantly, make sure you're looking ahead. You can see sort of the radical drops here down the mountain, which you do not want to be a part of. And as you can see there, there's two cars on their roof, and that's because the AI cannot drive this section. You'll see that more and more actually as this goes on. Cars just sort of fly straight over the edge of the hill because they get overzealous when they're overtaking, so on and so forth. One bit you definitely need to watch out for is this downhill section right here. Make sure you want to be on the brakes. You do not want to end up in the country club pond, because it is very likely you will do if you are overzealous in your driving. So as I said, just keep it controlled through there and you'll be pretty alright, because again, the AI really cannot negotiate that section all that well. I think I get overtaken by an AI at some point during this because I crash into the back of a car, if I remember rightly, but yeah, again, pretty easy one. It has to be said. Do I get overtaken? I could have swore I do. Maybe I do at this point. Yes, I've been spun round. Does a ZR350 pass me? I for some reason remember that. Yes, there he goes. Fortunately, this guy will find his own little calamity, but as long as you're not incompetent like me, you should be alright. I'm not even particularly amazing at driving in this game, and I managed to do it pretty easily. And as you can see there, the AI do have a bit of trouble negotiating this part of the motorway, and I completely burn outed him as well, just to add insult to his injury. But yeah, they're pretty fun, easy race, and again, you get to drive the Phoenix, which is a rare and unique vehicle, which is always good fun. And the ending place for this race is basically right where you started, down here in sort of the San Fierro, east side of San Fierro. Do be careful not to roll your car off of a lamppost. That is very common around here. The lampposts are pretty heavy, so just watch out for that. And also, no, never mind. I was going to say, be careful of the. I could have swore there was pedestrians that spawn there, but as you can see, me hitting a tree there. Be careful not to do that. You don't want to hit a tree. Hitting trees is bad. Anyways, our final race out here in San Fierro is the Country Endurance, the big one. And for this one, you get a very good vehicle in the Bullet Supercar. Of course, everyone else around you has pretty darn nice supercars as well. And much like the country, or much like the previous race, a lot of this is a race of attrition. The AI aren't particularly the best at driving down the narrow country lanes. There's a few sort of hilly bits. I'm sure the AI end up falling off there. And this is just a case of just playing chicken with how quickly you can go. As you can see there, the AI having a lot of problem with keeping their cars on the road, which is not something I happen to struggle with in this race, or at least at this point in this race. Yeah, it's just a case of how ballsy you want to be with the speed. Again, doing it late at night probably for the best, considering you kind of want to avoid hitting other cars on the road, and the less cars on the road, the less chance you've got of hitting cars on the road. That's how logic works. Another nice one with this as well is, despite the fact it is technically the longest race, I don't think it's the longest in terms of time because of the car you get, the Bullet. Very efficient car, pretty much excellent in all aspects. I will put this race down as moderate difficulty because it is a case of keeping the car alive, which is a little bit of an issue. Again, supercars, not the, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not the most durable of vehicles. You can smash this one about a little bit. The Bullet, I think, might be slightly stronger than some of your opponents in Furnaces, Trismos, stuff like that. I tried to mix those two cars together, apparently. But, yeah, even still, it's probably not really worth looking at. Smashing this one up too much because yeah, durability is not at the Bullet's primary source of propulsion. I got no idea what I'm saying. Can you tell? I'm slightly tired, and I've rambled on enough about racing because ultimately, racing isn't that difficult a side project. There's a few races that do need mentioning, sort of what to do. Sort of San Fierro Fastlane probably is going to be, yeah, it is your hardest one here. And even that's just a case of just decent car control, just making sure that you keep the alpha heading the right way, and make sure your AI companions aren't particularly great at finishing the race, and you'll be alright. Essentially, during racing, the biggest issue is not going to be the AI, your biggest opponent is yourself, and your ability to control the cars. And if you can control the cars well enough, and you can keep your speed up well enough, you won't have a problem with this. Or at the very least, you will have minimum problems. As I said, there's a few races later on, especially as we get into the Los Santos side of street racing, because those races, there is some interesting ones in there. But in terms of the San Fierro ones, yeah, it's a pretty easy section to clear out, and it's not a bad money little grind, I guess, as well. If you get $10,000 per race win, I mean, you're getting a what? $60,000 in the space of about 20 minutes. That's not too bad. It's a decent conversion ratio. Of course, there's better ways to make money, but this way also increases your count towards that elusive 100%, which is building very, very nicely indeed. Unfortunately, I don't actually show a little counter of how close we are to 100% after each episode, just because I don't want to do that much editing, and also me trying to remember stuff doesn't go very well, so You've probably been able to tell that by now. But yeah, as I said, there's not really anything difficult here. It's just sort of a case of your own ability to win races is the problem here. But as long as you can drive, and I mean, after all, by this point in the game, you've been to driving school, so you should be at least semi-decent at being a wheelman. It's not too bad, so... Either way, Country Endurance is about to come to an end, sort of another windy mountain road, and you're going to end up basically ending at the San Fierro Airport, which is essentially where we started. Funny thing is, occasionally an AI will fall off the road there, and you'll see them sort of drop down to the ground here, which can happen. It's not very likely to happen, but it can happen, because again, the AI a little bit incompetent, so that can be fun to watch. But yeah, this one's really not that difficult. As you can see, I actually kept the car in pretty decent standing. For some reason, I remember this car being horribly damaged afterwards, but maybe I'm making up stuff in my brain, because the car seems pretty fine up to now. Again, another bit of strategy, actually. If you are struggling with this in terms of the traffic, obviously you can use the traffic to slow the AI down, but if it's getting in your way, then it might be worth sort of doing these later at night where there is less traffic about. Anyways, that is our final $10,000 off today. Another fairly easy race in a fairly nice car, which is always good. Anyways, that is it for the San Fierro side of street racing. Of course, there are 4 more locations to look at, or sorry, 3 more locations to look at. So we'll go through those as we continue onwards. As you can see, I'm just showing off the fact that I got first place results. Feel free to post your times down below in the comment section, because I'm sure you'll be able to beat me. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching. Next time, we are going to be finishing out the bone lines by taking a look at buying some safe houses. So join us for that. Until then, farewell.
Speeding all around. The Naked 47 got the power and it's bound to move any mother that gets in my way. Just another power machine on the freeway. Riding with me, there's my MC homeboy. Knowing the rules ain't part of his program. Finding the right way around this map might be pretty hard, cause he's fucked on crack. Gee, Grand Theft Auto